It drifts alone, farther than anything we've ever touched, farther than the sun's warmth dares to reach. Voyager 1, a car-sized traveler, smaller than some people's kitchens, is out there in the cold, 14.5 billion miles from the only home it has ever known. When it left us in 1977, no one thought it would last this long. It was built for a 5-year voyage, but nearly 50 years later, it's still whispering to us from the dark. For decades, those whispers were the steady, faithful kind you get from an old friend. Numbers, data, the heartbeat of a machine too stubborn to die. But lately, that heartbeat has changed. Signals are coming in that don't make sense, patterns that shouldn't exist, pulses that don't belong to any known star or planet. The kind of data that makes you wonder if Voyager found something out there, or if something out there found Voyager. The beginning of this journey didn't start with engines firing or countdown clocks. It began with a rare trick of the cosmos itself, a planetary alignment so rare it comes only once every 175 years. In the early 1970s, astronomers realized that Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune were lining up in such a way that a single spacecraft could visit them all, one after another, using each planet's gravity to sling it onward to the next. The window would be brief, miss it, and you'd wait generations for it to happen again. NASA didn't hesitate. They designed not one, but 2 spacecraft, built to survive the unknown. They had to endure the killing radiation around Jupiter, the debris swirling in Saturn's rings, and a decade-long crawl into the outer dark where no rescue could ever reach them. Every system had backups. The computers, laughably tiny by today's standards, had to think for themselves if things went wrong. Each Voyager carried 11 instruments, all powered by nuclear batteries, because sunlight out there would be too weak to keep anything alive. In the summer of 1977, Voyager 2 left first. Just 16 days later, Voyager 1 followed, riding a Titan rocket into the sky. It was faster, on a path that would let it overtake its twin, reaching Jupiter and Saturn before anyone else. And as both probes faded into pinpoints against the black, no one could have imagined that, nearly half a century later, we'd still be talking about one of them. Not for what it saw, but for what might be watching it now. Voyager 1's first great triumph came 18 months later. Jupiter, long just a striped blur through Earth's telescopes, unfolded into a place of storms the size of worlds. The great red spot wasn't just a strange mark. It was a churning hurricane big enough to swallow 3 Earths. And then there were the moons. Io erupted in real time before Voyager's cameras, fountains of sulfur painting its surface in violent color. Europa, smooth and cracked like shattered ice, hinted at an ocean beneath, an alien sea hidden from starlight. Saturn was next, in 1980. What looked from Earth like simple, solid rings turned out to be countless threads, braids, and ripples, a frozen dance in slow motion. And Titan, Saturn's largest moon, wore an orange shroud of haze that Voyager couldn't pierce, but whose thick atmosphere whispered of possibilities. Possibilities that would take decades more to explore. After Saturn, there were no more planets ahead. Voyager 1 could have been sent toward Pluto, but NASA chose another fate for it. It would turn north, out of the plane of the planets, into the unknown. Before it left for good at Carl Sagan's urging, it turned its camera homeward. From 3.7 billion miles away, Earth was no more than a pale blue speck caught in a ray of sunlight. That was the last photograph Voyager ever took. The cameras went dark to save power. From then on, it would move forward blind, guided only by its instruments. But Voyager wasn't entirely alone. On its side, bolted in place, was a golden disk, a time capsule for anything that might find it. In 55 languages, it carried greetings. It carried music, from Bach to Navajo chants to Chuck Berry. It carried the sound of rain, a mother's heartbeat, whales calling across the ocean. Pictures of Earth's landscapes, the double helix of DNA, maps to find us. It was never really meant to be found. It was a gesture, a whisper into the void. We were here. We hope you are too. For years, the headlines faded, Voyager kept going, day after day, a million miles farther every 24 hours. The sun's invisible wind, pushing outward, began to weaken. The spacecraft was nearing the edge of the bubble that holds our solar system together. In 2012, it finally crossed into interstellar space, the first human-made thing to do so. But the space beyond wasn't the silent, uniform void scientists expected. It was restless, dense plasma where there shouldn't be, magnetic fields that bent the rules, waves rippling through the emptiness. The kind of waves you can almost feel in your bones, even though they're light years away. At first, the oddities were just curiosities, puzzles for scientists to scratch their heads over. But over time, the patterns started to repeat, to build on themselves, to hint at an order that nature alone might not make. By 2017, Voyager was receiving, or was it sending, something that didn't belong to the random chaos of deep space. And then, the signals changed. They became too precise, too deliberate. It was as though Voyager had found a voice in the dark. It felt like the entire station was holding its breath. No one spoke. The constant hum of electronics and distant chatter from mission control had faded into an oppressive, heavy silence. On the main monitor, the faint, almost ghostly signature of the object flickered, like it wasn't sure if it even wanted to be seen. And for a split second, it wasn't just data anymore. It was something alive. Every line of code, every calibrated sensor on the James Webb Telescope had been designed to pierce the veil of the cosmos and pull back its secrets. But sometimes when you stare too far into the abyss stares back. And on that night, we felt it. It wasn't just the distance that made it terrifying. It was how wrong it was. The object didn't behave like an asteroid or a comet. It didn't follow the laws we've lived by for centuries. It moved, but not like anything bound by gravity, almost as if it decided where it wanted to be, and simply appeared there. One of the analysts whispered under his breath, "It's looking at us." Everyone froze because no one dared to ask him to explain. We all just felt it too. The patterns in the data, tiny fluctuations in light, strange echoes in the infrared spectrum, they weren't random. They were deliberate. And then came the moment that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. As the Webb tracked the object across the blackness, the system picked up a faint pulse. Not a natural one. Not radiation, not static, not noise. A rhythm. 4 beats. Silence. 4 beats again. Like a heart. We tried to calculate how far it was, but every time the math settled, the answer changed. It was as if the object existed in multiple places at once, blinking between realities. At one moment, it was near the orbit of Neptune. The next, it was thousands of kilometers closer. No spacecraft we've ever built could do that. No natural body could either. The more we watched, the more it began to feel like the object wasn't approaching. It was testing us, seeing how long we would stare before we looked away. And here's the strangest thing. Nobody in the room could bring themselves to shut the feed off. We couldn't look away. Like a sailor hearing a distant siren song, we were drawn to it, knowing full well that whatever we were staring at might not want to be found. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the pulse stopped. The object drifted toward the edge of the screen, and for the first time in hours, our sensors could no longer lock onto it. It was gone. Or maybe it decided we weren't ready yet. But the real shock came minutes later, when one of our backup telescopes, completely independent from Webb, picked it up again. This time, not in deep space. This time, somewhere it had no right to be. Somewhere much, much closer. The deeper they went, the more the air itself seemed to change. It was heavier now, damp, clinging to their skin like an invisible film. The sound of the ocean above had faded to almost nothing, replaced by a deep, rhythmic pulse. At first, they thought it was their own heartbeat, amplified by the silence. But then they realized it was coming from ahead, something alive, something massive. Their lights swept over the landscape, and the seabed rose sharply into what looked like an ancient wall. Not rock, not coral, something built. Patterns were carved into its surface, symbols no one could recognize, glowing faintly with a light that seemed to breathe. The glow pulsed in sync with that deep sound in the water. Every beat made the sand at their feet shift, as if the entire ocean floor was moving with it. And then the temperature dropped. Not a normal ocean chill, but a sudden biting cold that seeped into their bones. Visibility thinned as a mist, impossibly thick for this depth, curled around them. Their lights began to fail, flickering like dying candles. The submarine's controls reacted sluggishly, almost as if the water itself was resisting their movement. Through the mist, something stirred. It wasn't a shadow because it wasn't hiding from the light. The light itself seemed to bend away from it. The shape was enormous, its edges blurred, as if the mind couldn't quite decide what it was seeing. For a moment, no one breathed. The hum from the wall quickened, almost agitated, and the carving's glow shifted from soft blue to a deep, burning red. And then they heard it, a sound so low it felt more like a thought pressing against the inside of their skulls than something they heard with their ears. It wasn't words, but it carried meaning. Leave. The captain tried to reverse the engines, but the submarine didn't respond. Something was holding it in place. Outside, that colossal, shifting figure drew closer, not moving through the water so much as appearing in new places without crossing the space between. The crew's instruments went wild, depth readings climbing and falling erratically, compass needles spinning, oxygen levels dropping even though their tanks were full. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the mist parted. The shape was gone. The wall stood silent, its red glow fading back to blue. Whatever force had held them loosened its grip. The submarine's engines roared back to life, and they rose, slowly at first, then with the urgency of people who knew they'd been given only one chance to leave. But as they ascended, no one spoke. No one dared. Not because of fear, but because each of them could still feel it. That thought, that warning, echoing in their minds. And they all knew without saying it that the deep had not shown them everything. When they finally broke the surface, the world felt too bright, too loud, too normal. But the captain didn't log the coordinates. No one did. Some things, they decided, aren't meant to be found twice. Yet somewhere, far beneath the waves, the wall still waits, and its pulse continues.